we work really well together because I can see where we're going and then he can help put all the pieces together. But when I would say something like, we should have another baby, and he's like, here are all the financial reasons and all the logical reasons why we shouldn't. I was like, yeah, we shouldn't. But then why do I feel this way? And it was really the biggest thing that we fought over because emotionally, I just could not let it go. And at one point, my therapist said to me, she's like, Steph, emotion and logic, like one is not right and one is not wrong. One is not better than the other. They're both just as valid. And a lot of time, the emotional decision is actually more valid. And for me, that changed everything.
Ever feel like you suck at this job? Motherhood, I mean. Have too much anxiety and not enough patience? Too much yelling, not enough play? There's no manual, no village, no guarantees. The stakes are high. We want so badly to get it right. But this is survival mode. We're just trying to make it to bedtime. So if you're full of mom guilt, your temper scares you, you feel like you're screwing everything up, and you're afraid to admit any of those things out loud, this podcast is for you. This is Failing Motherhood. I'm Danielle Bettman, and each week we'll chat with a mom ready to be real, sharing her insecurities, her fears, her failures, and her wins. We do not have it all figured out. That's not the goal. The goal is to remind you, you are the mom your kids need. They need what you have, you are good enough, and you're not alone. I hope you pop in earbuds, somehow sneak away, and get ready to hear some hope from the trenches. You belong here, friend. We're so glad you're here. Hey, it's Danielle. Quick reminder, if you're new here, to find our most listened to episodes on failingmotherhood.com. And if you're not new here, this is your reminder to leave a review so more moms know they are not alone if they feel like they're failing on a daily basis. And today's guest is no stranger to that feeling. Today I'm joined by Steph Pellish. She's a wife, a mom of 4, owns 2 businesses, and has always been a dreamer with big ideas. After feeling lost and lonely, Steph has built a community of entrepreneurial women who come together regularly to grow, learn, support, and collaborate with each other. She's passionate about bringing community and support to women all over the world to help them follow their dreams with the support they need. This episode is a beautiful conversation about the highs and lows of not only motherhood, but entrepreneurship. Steph chronicles her reckoning with wanting to have a 4th child and having that child 6 weeks before lockdown, and then her husband telling her 6 weeks after lockdown that things were not working. In the most relatable of ways, she shares the journey into healing she went through personally and in their marriage to come back even stronger. Since she's also a pediatric OT, we also ended up talking about how important working with the whole family is for the child's success. So whether you're trying to decide whether or not to have another child, hoping to salvage your marriage, or on your way to creating or owning your own business, or just desperate to not feel so alone without family support, this is your episode. So let's dive in. Welcome to Failing Motherhood. My name is Danielle Bettman, and on today's episode, I'm joined by Steph Pellish. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Danielle. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm excited to dive into all the ways that I'm failing and succeeding in motherhood.
Yes, I have brought a magnifying glass, so we will be inspecting that. But no, I already shared your bio, but just go ahead and reintroduce yourself. Who are you and who's in your family?
Yeah, so I'm Steph. I am a pediatric occupational therapist, life coach, motherhood coach, and just recently became a business coach and run a business networking group for female women entrepreneurs. Many of them are moms. And so that's kind of what I do. And I also have my husband, who I've been together with since we were in high school. And we have 4 kids together. They are 13, 11, 9, and almost 4. So we've got the teenager, the preteen, the middle schooler, and the toddler. So we are in like all of the stages right now.
Oh my gosh, you are stretched thin. Yeah. Does it feel like doing the splits a lot, having to be all these different places?
Yes, but I also have ADHD. So sometimes it's really good because I'm like, oh, great, here we go, all the things.
Yeah.
And also all the things where I can be really overwhelmed and very quickly dive into one thing, realizing that I completely forgot something else. My kids are very active. They're involved in a lot of things. And so we can dive into this in a minute. But when I had 3 kids, it was super overwhelming and they were all close together in age. And now with the 4th, there's a gap. And so I rely on my older kids a lot to help with the younger one, which has been a huge blessing and also sometimes challenging.
Fair. Yeah, I can only imagine. No, I had 2 for a reason, and that was all we can handle. But I can totally see the ends of that spectrum of being like, yes, this is great stimulation, and then immediately, nope, this is too much. And then, okay, we're back again. And this is good.
Yeah. That chaos cycle, I call it.
Yeah.
When I can keep my chaos outside of me, and I've learned how to do that much better, but when it comes in, it's a struggle for sure.
Yeah. Well, my husband and I are high school sweethearts as well. So very cool. Love that. You already started, segueing into it, but I always like to give that disclaimer right off the bat for my guests. So have you ever felt like you were failing motherhood?
Yeah, definitely. So I said I have 4 kids, but I'm also the oldest of 4 kids. And I work in pediatrics as an occupational therapist. I always babysat. My cousins were all younger than me. I was around kids my entire life. And so going into motherhood, I knew what to expect in terms of the physical demands. I knew all the things that I would need to do as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
I was extremely overwhelmed by the emotional piece day one. I really struggled to bond with my daughter, had a lot of anxiety, didn't know it was anxiety until I had my 4th. That's interesting. But didn't know it was anxiety, just felt really overwhelmed, didn't really know how to bond with her. I took an infant massage class and found like this amazing connection with her when she was about 6 or 7 weeks old.
Mm.
I then had 2 more babies and we had our 3rd baby. We moved. We took the money that we were going to put into the house that we're in now and bought a business. That business very quickly failed.
Oh, no.
I was overwhelmed at work. I was showing up for these families and helping their kids. And the moms would be like, you must be an amazing mom. And then I would go home. My house was a mess. I was fighting with my husband. We were up to our eyeballs in this business that wasn't going well. I was screaming at my kids. And I was also at the same time saying, I want another baby.
Mm.
And so things at our house were not great for a long time. And then we closed the business with a lot of debt. My husband finally said, fine, we'll have another baby. I got pregnant. And so that was 2019. In 2020, I had a baby in January. 6 weeks later, we went into shutdown. And 6 weeks later, my husband said, this isn't working. This is not going to work.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, great. Now what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of time of feeling like a failure as a mom. And that was the point where I was like, no, right? Because like I said, we had been together since high school. So we had a lot of unhealthy patterns that we needed to break and move through. It did work. We're still together. So that's the good news.
Spoiler alert.
But it was a lot of hard work. And I also, I was really burnt out in 2019. And I thought, I'm going to go on maternity leave. I was a contractor, so I didn't really have a leave. I was going to take time off. And then when the kids went back to school in September, my plan was to figure out what I was going to do while I was on this leave and go from there. Well, my whole life fell apart in 2020, as did a lot of people. And so I just kind of started rebuilding myself. And along the way, I realized, oh, moms need more support. I need more support. I actually need real support. And so that's kind of where my journey started in getting out of feeling like I was a failure as a mom every day, all the time.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So relatable. And I love how you kind of shared that progression, because that's never just like, it's cupcakes and rainbows one day. And then, life transformation happens the next. And then here we are on a podcast talking about it. Like This is years.
Yeah.
Years of your kid's childhood, years of your marriage, years of your adult life that you're just kind of summing up real quick. But there's a lot to that.
Between 2014 and 2019, I really struggled. It was fine. And even after that, right? Like I was still in a struggle trying to come out of it.
Yeah.
But I would say to my husband, like, I just don't feel good. And he was like, well, you're always this miserable. And he wasn't saying it to be mean, but he was like, well, this is just the way you are.
It's like objective at this point.
Right. And then I would say something to my mom, and my mom would I would talk to my mom about how overwhelmed I was or how much help I would need. And she would kind of like, oh, well, you're doing such a great job. Like, just pray more, or, well, you just have to do it. And then I actually talked to my doctor about it too. And my doctor was like, you're such a super mom. And I'm like, okay. Like, I really felt crazy because I was like, I'm telling people that I'm struggling, and they're telling me I'm always miserable. They're telling me I'm doing enough. They're telling me that I should pray more. They're telling me I'm a super mom. Then why do I feel like this? And so I didn't have anybody to validate that feeling of unworthiness, of not being enough and doing enough. They just kind of like glazed over that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really where I now don't glaze over it and talk about my struggles and talk to other women who have similar struggles and are going through, the challenges of motherhood. Because listen, being on your own, there are enough life challenges. And then I have 4 kids. Now I'm responsible for all their life challenges too.
Right. No pressure. And yeah, that dismissiveness or, real gaslighting there for a while. I mean, that's so detrimental when you need solidarity, you need true validation, and you need real support. So looking back in hindsight, what do you all feel like was contributing at that point? Because it's always multiple factors.
A lot of it was we had 3 kids within 4 years. We bought a house. We had a business that was failing. My husband and I had no real support. I tell people, and I say this, like, we had a summer where I had 12 different babysitters for my kids in 3 months.
Oh my God.
Because we don't have family close by. We didn't have a babysitter that was consistent. I would find someone and then they would get another job. I was literally pulling the lifeguard from the Y to come to my house, the babysitter from the Y to come to our house. I was taking the kids to the Y for 2 hours so that I could sit and work and get something done, but I couldn't see clients while they were there. And so my husband and I were fighting about who was going to go to work and who was going to stay home with the kids. And then I wasn't working, so then I couldn't pay a babysitter. So it was such a stressful time for us. And again, it comes back to that support. And we talk about, there's so much talk about it takes a village. It takes a community. And we really didn't have that. And I heard recently someone say it takes a paid village.
Mm-hmm.
And now we need to teach people how to create that village and also recognize that we have to pay for it and what that looks like. And that's tricky when, you've got money going out in every direction and now you need to ask for more help or pay for more help. It's a tricky balance.
Yeah. I mean, nothing is getting cheaper these days. Understatement of the year. Yeah. No, but how was there any conflicting feelings then when you were trying to decide to have a 4th about, can we do this well, or do we have the resources, or, how did you kind of wrestle with that decision?
So we fought a lot about having a 4th. For me, it was, there are things in my life that I just know to be true. They're usually like the bigger things. And I knew I was meant to have a 4th baby. I knew it was going to be a girl. I felt crazy because I was like, we have so much stuff going on. We probably can afford it, but it's not a great financial decision to have another baby. And yet it was this obsessive thing for me. And I think part of why it became obsessive is because, again, I wasn't getting that validation. I wasn't feeling heard, but also I just had this, I knew she was meant for me. And my husband was really afraid because he was like, if we have a baby and it's not a girl, we're not having any more. Like it took 6 years to get him to agree. And not that I wanted to be pregnant in those first 2 or 3, but I continually talked about it. And so he could see all the logical reasons why it was not the best idea. And I mean, she is just the sweetest thing. And she is just like, she's also almost 4, and I want to pull my hair out every day with her. But she really was. She was like, my therapist at one point was like, she's kind of like your emotional support animal. I'm like, I don't know that that's healthy. But she just came into my life and she made me a better mom. She grounded me in ways that I didn't have with parenting my other 3 kids. And it just is a very different connection that I have with her that has improved and greatly benefited my other kids and my connection with them.
I love hearing that. That's like, the best case scenario for the end to that journey is that it was exactly kind of what you were feeling it would be, and it really met that place of intuition for you and really benefited the whole family. And that's what we dream for, and it takes a lot of work to get there. And so I'm going to take you back to where you left off before, where you said your husband had said this isn't working, like 6 weeks post COVID lockdown. So take us back there. What did you do? Like logistically, emotionally, all the things.
So he kind of felt like I was choosing having a baby over having a marriage, having him. Like he felt that I was so obsessed with wanting another baby that I just needed him to have another baby. And it wasn't that way for me. There were days where I was like, I have such a strong feeling of wanting a baby and he doesn't. Like, is this the right relationship? But at no point did I feel like it was the wrong relationship where I was supposed to like go find someone else to have like that was never it for me. But I also really struggled to find how they could both live together or be together. And so when he said, we'll have another baby, I really did panic because I got pregnant right away with all of my kids. We were really lucky and blessed that way to just not have any problems. But he was on his way to work and I called him and I was like, we're pregnant. And he was like, that's great. And I was like, he thinks that's great? Does he?
You're like second guessing it? Yeah.
100%. And so, part of our journey during my pregnancy was we weren't very supportive of each other. We had our own things going on. I was exhausted. My self-worth was 0. I was, working, but then coming home and not able to do anything. I was sitting like at the kitchen table, doing nothing, scrolling on my phone, ignoring the kids. My husband would be like making dinner and he would get frustrated. He's like, I need your help. And I'd be like, oh, okay. But then he was doing so much that then I didn't have to do anything, which made my self-worth even go down lower.
Yeah.
But he was doing everything and picking up all of the things that I wasn't doing. And so it just really wasn't working. And so him kind of saying like, this isn't working. I started therapy. He also started therapy. And I found my self-worth. That's really where I needed to realize that I was deserving of the things that I wanted. I was deserving of a better relationship. He was deserving of a better relationship. And that if we wanted to make it work, we needed to actually put the work into our marriage and not just living in all of the things that were happening every day in our life because it was so busy. And honestly, like I say COVID saved our marriage because our busyness really stopped and it allowed us to be at home. It allowed me to be at home and to heal and to figure out how to get through all of it. And then all of the other activities picked back up again. Now I have better coping skills. I now have a better way to show up for myself first or build that time in for myself first. My husband and I do regular dates. He works from home a lot now too. And so even during the day, if we're both working from home, we'll go for a walk. We'll have lunch together. We're doing things together more often, intentionally.
Yeah. COVID was the catalyst, right? So the catalyst could have pushed you one way or the other. And at least we had a little bit of the space to realize it in real time and, make that what it probably needed to be. Not everybody's is like the same. I don't even know if you would say happy ending, because in some ways, maybe a divorce is the best case scenario. And, that's exactly what your family needed. But for you, it sounds like it was the thing that really made everything go on the table. And you could have the time you needed to be able to address it without the busyness of life just clouding it up and creating that chaos and that noise and just perpetuating the same old for more years, where until it kind of gets to an unsustainable place that you can't, surface it back up again and save it at that point.
Yeah, it also taught me too that my voice mattered, because in our relationship, I would voice something or I would have an opinion. And when my husband had a different opinion for many reasons, I always thought that his was the better idea, because he would use logic. He's an accountant. He is very logical. He's also very good with details. I am a big picture. I'm a dreamer. Said I have ADHD. So I'm here, I'm there, I'm all over the place. So I miss a lot of the details, which means that we work really well together because I can see where we're going and then he can help put all the pieces together. But when I would say something like, we should have another baby, and he's like, here are all the financial reasons and all the logical reasons why we shouldn't, I was like, yeah, we shouldn't. But then why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
And it was really the biggest thing that we fought over, because emotionally, I just could not let it go. And at one point, my therapist said to me, she's like, Steph, emotion and logic, like one is not right and one is not wrong. One is not better than the other. They're both just as valid. And a lot of time, the emotional decision is actually more valid. And for me, that changed everything.
Whoa.
Because it changed the dynamic of how I saw my husband as this person who was not better than me, but who had more say.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gave me more of an equal footing in our relationship and changed the dynamic of our relationship for the better.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's something that I think will sit with people. Anytime you have one of those big gems and takeaways from therapy, it's like, pass on the free therapy. We all need it. Take it in our own direction. But that was kind of be my next follow-up question. So you're already kind of half answering that, is when you alluded to there's unhelpful dynamics or kind of patterns or habits that we had because we've been together since high school. Is there any other kind of illustration of that you feel like you had to work through, just like that one?
That was a big one. The other thing too was we both, like, I was 17. So my husband knew me as a 17-year-old. I am very different than that now in my 40s. And we both had these preconceived notions of who each other were and who we expected the other to be. And so it was kind of reintroducing ourselves to each other. Like, first we had to figure out who we were separate from each other.
Yeah.
Because my whole adult life, I've been in this relationship as a partner, as a wife with this person, and same thing for him. And so we needed to figure out who we were separately and then kind of come back together and say, hey, this is who I am. And then does this still work for both of us? And, that doesn't mean that our relationship is now perfect and we're both like, you're the most amazing person ever in the whole world, right? Like, we still get frustrated with each other. There are still things that he does that I'm like, man, he still does that thing. That didn't change, right? And he says the same thing about me too. But we also have both, I'll speak for myself, but like, I've also gained so much self-awareness over the things that used to make me feel shame and guilt that I wasn't good at them. Now I'm like, oh, I didn't do that the way that you would, because my brain thinks differently than your brain does. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that I'm like, he can get up and go plan a meal, cook it, put it together, and clean up in about an hour. I might plan the meal for an hour, and then we probably have a practice that I'm late for. And so now we're going to throw leftovers in after practice because I never execute it. But instead of shaming myself for that, I now have tools to help me so that it's not an hour of me planning. It's okay, I can't sit here for an hour. I know that's what I want to do, or that's what my tendency is to do. But yeah, so a lot of it has been finding that self-awareness, finding those things that make me who I am and leaning into them versus trying to change and be
better.
Yeah.
I put quotes up, but nobody can see me.
Better, different, right? I was going to say more like him, but like more efficient in the way that he does things. But yeah, we do things differently, and that's for the better for all of us.
It is. Yeah. It's the yin and yang that, we all need in our relationships, where there is that opposites attract factor. That is real. If we really married the mirror image of ourselves, that would be really weird. It wouldn't work.
It would probably be bored too.
Yes. But there is just a natural then friction and frustration when the other person's brain does not work like mine. And that's not my favorite way of doing this. And that doesn't feel right, or that doesn't feel efficient based on my perspective and the way that I'm seeing that problem. And that's something we have to deal with all of our marriages. But I really do relate. It sounds like we're married to the same person. So we'll have to keep this conversation going offline. So, big emotions from little people are running the show at your house. Is that right? Do they fall apart when something doesn't go their way? Ugh, just once. Why can't they accept the fact that the answer is no? Am I right? The struggle is real. You're not alone, and you're in the right place. When your days are filled with relentless pushback, it is so hard to feel like a good parent. Especially when your in-laws aren't shy in sharing how they think your kids just need a good spanking. Every time you lose it when they lose it, you feel like a failure. The worst part is, without addressing the root of your child's behavior, you're doomed to play a fruitless game of whack-a-mole, reacting rather than preventing the next conflict. And next time, nothing's going to go differently. The good news is, when you have a handful of effective discipline tools in your pocket, you're able to step into full confidence as their parent. Parenting actually becomes a whole lot easier. I promise, you're not failing them. You just need more tools. So if you have a tiny human who's full of love and yet so difficult, if you can only be so nice for so long, if you've tried everything and still feel defeated on the daily, my free class, Authentic and Unapologetic, is for you. In this free training, I share 5 huge misconceptions in parenting strong-willed kids that inadvertently invite defiance, 4 mistaken goals they're using their behavior to meet and what to do about it, how to let judgment roll off your back and truly feel like the parent your kids need, and why what you're currently doing just isn't working and isn't going to anytime soon. So go to parentingwholeheartedly.com/unapologetic to access this exclusive free training immediately. That's parentingwholeheartedly.com/unapologetic. The link will be in the show notes. I've already learned so much from you in just that self-awareness piece and, being able to validate your emotional side of things and knowing that that's just as important as the logical factor. I think that it's we can be so quick to dismiss ourselves and our own voice because we don't have someone else advocating for it. So
yeah,
it's just going to go to the wayside.
I had some really good friends, and I feel like sometimes I talk poorly about them in the sense of I had really good friends who were friends of convenience. And I don't mean that to be rude. I just mean they were the friends that were available. They were the ones who had kids the same age. They were the ones who were off the same days I was off. And so I loved hanging out with them. I loved being around them. And it was great. It was great for me. But also, they weren't having these same kinds of feelings that I was feeling. They also weren't big dreamers like I was. And so I didn't even have the friendships to support what I needed. And I was also really insecure in my female friendships as well, in my female relationships. And so one of the big things that has also helped me is finding friends and finding women who are big dreamers, who are in community with me and want the same thing, that I can show up and be my whole self and not just my mommy self or my overwhelmed wife self. I can be all of it.
How did you find that?
So last October, I went to a retreat with my business coach, and I sat at a table with 12 women. And it was the first time in my life that I sat at a table of dreamers, of women who were like figuring it out, wanting to build their own business. Some of them were divorced. And it was interesting because some of them were divorced and I feel like they found their power and then got divorced and then felt like if I can do that, I can build my own business. Some got divorced and built a business out of necessity. Some were still with their husbands having similar conversations saying like, he just doesn't get me. He doesn't support me. And in that week, I just sat there saying, I need this. Like my husband can't support me in this way. I need to stop asking him to support me in this way. And so when I came home from that, I was talking to two of my girlfriends that were in a networking group with me a few years prior. And I was like, let's just start meeting on Fridays. We can get together. And we started meeting up on Fridays for a couple months. And I started talking to one of my coaches about it. And she was like, I want to come. I was like, okay. And she invited people. And so it's now growing. And last month we had 15 women show up. I have almost 100 women inside of the online community, and they're all local. But we have anywhere from 15 to 20 women come every month and meet. And I call it networking, but it's really like a support group for female entrepreneurs, because we support each other. I can't tell you how many women show up and cry at the first meeting that they come to, because they're like, this is what I need. This is what I've been looking for. And it's just because I needed it too. I still need it. You know, I'm building this business, and at the same time, I'm bringing it to them and saying, okay, why isn't this working? I'm asking you guys who are in this business with me, why is this piece not working? And I feel safe to get feedback. And so many of them are now clients of each other or are now collaborating with each other. They rent space from each other. Like we are building this community, and it's just incredible. And I feel so safe there and so supported to show up and say like, hey, I want to build a global business. And no one's like, well, how are you going to get the money to pay for that? They're like, oh, that's so fun. How do we get you there?
Yeah.
And so that's such a difference in terms of, you know, my husband who wants to be supportive, but he's looking at, you know, all right, how do we fund this? Or how do we do it this way? Or how do you do it that way? And these women who are like, oh no, really, like, how do we do this? How can we help you? How can we support you?
Yeah.
And so it took a lot of pressure off of my marriage too, because he doesn't need to support me like that anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, he still does, and he supports me really well too, but
in ways that are designed for that relationship.
Right.
Yeah. I know personally exactly what you're talking about, but for the listeners who might be really early on in a business opportunity or, you know, wanting to be an entrepreneur or being in the first few years, I know how transformational it was to find those containers and spaces myself, but speak to why you need something that is more designed for it, like more, you know, more niche, more strategic. Why do you need that when that is kind of your role right now?
I mentioned, like, I had a few business coaches. I had some really crappy business coaches. My first business coach was very condescending, very patriarchal, and talked to me as if he was doing me a favor and was selling me on my own business every time I spoke to him. And I was like, no, I know this is a good idea, but I need it to work. Like, I don't need you to sell me why it's going to work. I need you to help me make it work. And so I didn't have a great experience in terms of the coaches I was finding for my business. And I felt lonely. And now so much is online because of COVID that the connections I was making were intermittent, or I was in a big coaching community. And so it was different people every week or whenever we would meet. And so there was no consistency. And when you're at the beginning of a business and you're not making the money that you see all of these online influencers, online businesses making, in 2 years, I made $8 million. Well, that's great. I'm trying to make $800 and it's been months, right? And so people talk about it, but I think we gloss over the fact that, for 2 years, for 3 years, you can own a business and not make any money. You can lose money. And because I had that experience in a previous business of losing money, I was a lot more gun shy this time of investing and spending, but also really wanting this business to be in alignment for me. And so this community really helps me and helps the women who show up to know that they're not alone in that, know that slow progress is still progress, know that, it's okay that you have a launch that 0 people show up for, and that you have to keep showing up, because we also have women in this group who are very successful. And so it's also seeing them. And one week, this woman said, oh, every time I raise my prices, I get more people knocking on the door. Like, I get more people coming in, and she's like, I'm already full. And for me, I was like, wow, this woman keeps raising her prices. And every time she does, she gets more clients, but she doesn't actually have room for clients. I need to talk to her about what she's doing and find out, how did she get there? And so we have people like across the continuum of, we have a woman coming to our meeting this week who doesn't even have a business yet. She just wants, she's got a dream. And so she's coming. And then we have, like I said, these women who they own their own space, they have a full clientele, and they're good, and everything in between. So you get to see this kind of like mentor-mentee piece inside of there. It's just a connection. We could go on all day about the connection for it.
I'm letting you. And it's like a picture of, you need to know what's possible. You need to know that you're not delusional, that you think that you can be successful, because, when you get by yourself at night in front of your computer, imposter syndrome takes over. You feel very crazy. You feel like, what have I done? What did I sign up for? I regret this. I did not know this was even what I was signing up for. This is not what I thought this was going to be. And you just sit with that panic, and you have this responsibility that, you're taking these important resources of your families and then, essentially gambling them with self-belief.
Yes. Yes.
That's terrifying.
Right. And I know, and maybe you've experienced the same thing, but for me, the people that I'm following, the influencers or the coaches or like the big business people, a lot of them don't have children.
Oh, yeah.
Or aren't married or are divorced. And I really struggled with finding someone who valued their family, who wanted their marriage, who had more than 1 or 2 kids. I have 4 kids. That's a lot of kids. Right? And so part of it is, I want to be the role model for other women to save their marriage, to have a healthy relationship with my children, to build businesses that support my family. And so that's what my goal is. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm trying to do, is show up and be like, hey, if I can do it, you certainly can too. And no, it is not easy. It really does take years. It doesn't take 2 weeks like,
yes,
oh, I had a course and it went viral and I made $500,000 in 6 weeks. No, maybe you did, but how much time and work did you put into, like, I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. I haven't had my $1 million year yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I keep showing up. I keep finding what's in alignment for me. I keep doing the thing, believing that what I'm putting out there is what I'm supposed to be putting out there and is what the women in my community need.
Yes. Knowing you're not the only one, finally finding those people, it is a game changer. And if we haven't reiterated that enough through this conversation, you need to find your people if you are resonating at all with this, because it is crucial. It is life-saving in some ways, because there are huge highs and there are huge lows in the entrepreneurship journey. And so much of it is so similar to parenting, because you didn't know what you were signing up for. There's a ton of imposter syndrome. And every day you're solving problems you did not know you were going to have the next day. It keeps you on your toes and keeps you humble 100% of the time. So what are your businesses? I think you mentioned your pediatric OT. Is that one of them?
Yes. So I am a pediatric OT. I work with families locally and online, but a lot of times OT works directly with the child. I work more with the family. So I do a lot of holistic, a lot of systemic. So I'm looking at the whole family dynamic when I'm working with a child. I'm looking at usually what's going on with mom. I want to connect with moms. I want to connect with mom and see what's going on with her so that I can then help her show up better for herself so that she can then show up better for her kids. And when you have a kid who's neurodivergent, that's tricky because they probably have 3 different therapists. They've got extra therapies every week. They need extra support at school. And there's nobody to hold mom's hand to take her through all of those steps. And so that's also a lot of what I do is I help moms find the resources for their kids. I help them find, the right language to use when talking to schools. I help mom find the support to get a babysitter so that she can go on date night. Like those are things that we talk about. So, I get phone calls saying, "Oh, I want you to come see my kid for OT." And I'm like, well, we're going to talk about date night. We're going to talk about your relationship with your husband because a big passion of mine is protecting marriages. I mean, that was so important for me, for my own marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I see where, women, moms put themselves to the side, especially when you have a kid who has extra needs and, extra schedules and needs all of these things in place for them. That's where all of her energy goes.
Right.
And then dad starts to feel resentful because mom isn't paying attention to him. But then mom's resentful because dad isn't even on board or doesn't understand what's going on. And so one of the big things that I do is help them to find some communication, help them to find some connection over how we can show up as a team to support the whole family. That was the long piece of my OT.
But that was how we originally connected, because usually the impression for OT is it's for the child.
Yeah.
Right. It's teaching the child coping strategies. It's teaching them, emotion pieces. It's teaching them how to regulate. So for you, how did you make that? It's not even a leap. To me, it makes 1000% sense because that's why I do what I do. But why is that? Why is the whole family piece so crucial?
Yes. So my background in pediatric OT is in early intervention. And here in Pennsylvania, early intervention is a coaching model. And so it's 0 to 3. And we coach the parents on how to help the kids. So it's not really direct service. And it was such a natural, I'm already coaching moms, but I can do so much more if I don't have the county looking at each goal. And if I don't only have to address these 2 goals, if I can talk to mom about, I can show up and I'm here to see Johnny, but I show up and mom's like, "Oh, Susie has just been all over the place this week. I can just help mom with Susie this week." Or mom's had a really rough day. I can help mom regulate. And then we can talk about Susie or Johnny or whatever it might be. And so it was kind of a natural lead into that motherhood coaching, that life coaching piece for me. And then, like I said, with this networking group, and I have 20 years of entrepreneur business experience, it kind of became, oh, I can also work with women who are dreamers. Like, this is fun. I can talk about this stuff all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just keeps naturally expanding. And like I said, it's been in so much alignment for me. And that has been the biggest piece, because in 2020 and 2021, I was like, okay, I know I need to like do something else, but I didn't know what it was. And part of it was I created a group on Facebook, and I just started sharing my story in there. I just started saying like, hey, mama, you're doing great. This sucks. Like your dishwasher broke today and your kids are screaming and your house is a mess, but you're doing great because you're showing up. And I think that's the piece that so many women don't hear enough. So many moms don't hear enough. You're doing a great job. Like when I talk to somebody, the first conversation that I always have with them is, you're doing enough. You've done enough. And every one of the moms is always like crying, thank you so much for saying that. But it's really my favorite part of connecting, because, you know, moms are calling because they don't know where else to go. And they don't feel like they're doing enough because they don't know where else to go and who else to talk to. So validating that they're making the right decisions, they're finding the right supports, because it's a struggle. It's hard.
Yeah. Again, understatement of the year.
Yeah.
I always tell parents when they, when I get to meet them face to face too, like you're already a phenomenal parent in my book, just by the fact that you are willing to reach out and have this conversation with a stranger. It says so much about who you are and how much you care about this kid and how hard you are trying. And it is not for lack of information or effort.
Yeah.
That we are here talking about how hard it is. Like, that is real. And, you need to know that so that you stop making it harder on yourself by beating yourself up.
Yeah. That was the piece that I was doing. I was beating myself up constantly, criticizing myself, telling myself I wasn't doing enough. And that was really hard to overcome and stop doing that. And even now, like, there are days where I'm like, wait a minute, that's not real anymore. I don't have to listen to that. Like, all right, I notice it. I hear you, but nope, we don't believe that anymore.
Yes. So what is one or two of like your favorite mantras or something that you try to remind yourself of as a little pep talk?
I do a lot of reminding myself that I'm doing my best, and that the way that I'm doing it is the way that I'm doing it because that's the way that I'm doing it. Versus saying I should have done it this way or I should have done it that way. I really do have this perspective of, oh, I didn't get it done, or, oh, I didn't do it that way, or I didn't do it the most efficient way. I can learn from this and I can do better next time, but also I can give myself grace. So learning to give myself grace and reminding myself that I'm giving myself grace has definitely been a huge piece.
Yes, because the energy spent on ruminating over that wasn't the most efficient way or whatever is not going to make you more efficient.
No. No, it makes you much less efficient, actually, ironically.
Yes. But then, of course, that's not, the thought process. That's not where we're coming.
Beating yourself up for not doing the thing actually makes you do less things than if you put it aside and say, okay, how can we do it better next time? Or how can I move forward?
Yes.
More efficient.
That's the quote right there. So, okay, how can listeners connect with you offline? Where are you at?
Yes. So on Facebook, I'm Stephanie Pellish, Pellish. I do have a Facebook group that is called Motherhood, Life, and Business Coaching with Stephanie Pellish that you can search. And then on Instagram, I am thriving_through_motherhood. So it's thriving through motherhood, because I just found, so many of us are surviving or drowning. I felt like I was drowning for such a long time, and I wanted to learn how to thrive. And so that was the name of my business for a while. And now it's a little less exciting with coaching, but yeah, just trying to figure out how to thrive through motherhood.
Love that. Okay. So we'll put those links in the show notes so it's easy to click from. But I have to ask you the last question I ask every guest that comes on, which is, how are you the mom your kids need?
I'm the mom my kids need because I'm the woman I want to be. I'm showing up for myself. I'm doing the things that I know I need to do for me. And therefore, I know that I'm modeling for them and showing up for them in the best way that I can every day.
So good. Yes. I love that. They are lucky to have you. And we are lucky to have you today on failing motherhood. And I feel like we could genuinely talk for another 3 hours because there's so many things that we connect on. But we will wrap it up there so that they can get back to the laundry and the dishes and all the things. But thank you so much for your honesty, for being able to be so vulnerable and open book and share your story, because it's so incredibly helpful to be able to see yourself mirrored in someone else and to be able to relate and to be able to feel seen and to know that there are a road and paths forward towards where you want to go and that, you know, you can follow someone's footsteps there. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Failing Motherhood. Your kids are so lucky to have you. If you loved this episode, take a screenshot right now and share it in your Instagram stories and tag me. If you're loving the podcast, be sure that you've subscribed and leave a review so we can help more moms know that they are not alone if they feel like they're failing motherhood on a daily basis. And if you're ready to transform your relationship with your strong-willed child and invest in the support you need to make it happen, schedule your free consultation using the link in the show notes. I can't wait to meet you. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. I believe in you, and I'm cheering you on.